Hi, Melvyn. Yeah.
Like over there now, especially during this chaotic time frame?
I've been asked that question and I kind of feel like I'm sheltered from it. I, I see my friends who have jobs outside of the home before COVID started and um, it felt a lot different to them.
Hmm.
I've always worked from home. I've worked from home since 2014, and so I'm also a homebody. I didn't necessarily feel like I was having to hunker down in ways that I didn't want to. At the same time, now that it's progressing, um, especially in terms of wanting to visit my family in different states, I'm feeling the heaviness of just the worry and the anxiety about traveling. And yeah. How about you? Are you well? Have you stayed well through everything that's going on?
Yeah, at least in Asia, majority of the people still stay within, like you stay within your family unless uh most of you are married and then you move out. So everyone's in the same household, so it's pretty okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And also like using Singapore is it's relatively small. So as compared to in the States where you need to fly off to see somebody
Mhm.
else. Like
Mhm.
Singapore, if you drive, depending on how traffic is, like maybe 20 to 30 minutes, you can have one end of Singapore to the other. So
Okay. Yes, that's quite different. Yeah.
mm, yeah,
To get to one of the restaurants that we like, it's a 45-minute drive. Yeah, it's different.
mm,
I'm glad to hear that you're well, though, and your family as well.
yeah, glad to. Yeah, also I think we're also blessed because like we are at this era where technology allows these things to happen. Like if it's 30-ish years ago, you'd be like, what do
Oh,
we do?
yeah.
Mm.
We'd feel so much lonelier and so much more isolated, I think. Yeah.
The accident, like that you had.
Oh, yeah. Wow. Thank you for asking about that. It's been a little bit over a year because that happened in July of 2019. And whew, it took it took a good full year, Melvin, for me to feel like emotionally stable. My body healed really fast. I had shattered my scapula on the right side, and of course had the different, you know, um, injuries from sliding across the road, and had like lots of scars on my face, and have been getting those treated with. They're called traumatic tattoos because I literally have asphalt in my face in various places that won't come out on its own. It's not like it comes to the surface and then just comes out. And one of my biggest scars was like right on the end of my nose right here, and that one was really difficult for me to make peace with, so to speak. Because I would go out and people would be like, "You have something on your face." So it's constantly being reminded of it. But like I said, I'm getting some laser treatments for that, and it's getting better. I'm not fixated on it so much, but I have to say that the whole experience and how my body changed throughout the recovery, and the ways in which that I saw myself responding after seeing the injuries, especially on my face, really shifted how I view my body and my body image and my relationship with my body and how I care for myself and pay attention to how I talk to myself in a positive way. Um, because I know, like, there was one instance where I was standing in front of the mirror, and this was this was maybe 10 days after the accident happened. So the wounds are fresh, you know, they're oozing and they're just kind of nasty. And I looked at myself in the mirror and I was like, oh, like there was the audible, ugh, like gross, ew. And I immediately started crying, not because it was ew, because I was like, oh no, no, this is not how you heal, Kori. You have to be kind to yourself. Like it's still emotional because, and this is why I do the work I do, because we're so hard on ourselves and hold ourselves up to such high standards. And it's not that shame and that disgust that will motivate us to change if we want to change. It's kindness and it's compassion and it's curiosity and love that will. But so it's been a little over a year. I definitely feel more emotionally stable, more grounded, more rooted, so to speak. I know I had a concussion, and so it really took a while for me to feel like I could think clearly and um, do what I did before the accident happened, just from an organizational standpoint, and keep things consolidated in my mind. And yeah, and that was hard.
Mm.
Thank you for asking.
Thank, thank you for being so honest with it. So,
Yeah.
like, just in to tie in with like just in like with what you do now, as in like um building like a healthy image with, let's say, with relationship with food or relationship with your body, like
Yeah.
how how does such an incident change, or in a sense, like how does it affect?
There's so many things that can affect our relationship with food. Um, and it's real nuanced for everyone. There are the relationships we have with food are deeply tied into the relationships that we have with our bodies.
Mm,
Um, because it's often how we feel about our bodies that impact how we eat and how we use food or manipulate food, or um, what we'll do to change our eating routines or patterns or amounts or things like that. But it's complex, and those relationships are influenced by a lot of different factors. I think it's really important to recognize that the majority of us we're not born with a dysfunctional relationship with food. We don't come out of the womb, or our bodies for that matter. We don't come out of the womb preoccupied by good or bad foods and healthy versus unhealthy foods. And is it like this breast milk better be clean? Like this has too much fat in it. There isn't any of that. There's no worry. There's no anxiety. The relationship it's free, it's unfettered, it's flexible, it's adaptive. You know, we eat what our caregivers give us. We cry when we're hungry and we stop naturally when we're full, right? Now, there are things that can happen, certainly in infancy, that can influence our relationship with food later on down the road. You know, if a mother has trouble breastfeeding, for example, and that connection between the mother and the baby is kind of fraught with anxiety because the mother really wants to breastfeed but can't, and the baby won't latch. And, you know, is there a lot of energy, negative or unpleasant energy around that? That can certainly affect a child as they grow up. But, you know, for many of us as children, the good, bad, the binary thinking around food and fear of food and fear of fat, those weren't thoughts that we had as kids. But at some point, and this varies for everyone, of course, you know, we we begin being impacted by the culture, and all of us grow up in a different sort of culture. But there's also the diet culture, which very much and in many ways stigmatizes certain foods and moralizes certain bodies and body types and muscularity or leanness, those sorts of things. And we all grow up in different sorts of different households. And the way that our caregivers act around food, how food was approached at the dinner table, was eating in our families chaotic, or was it relaxed and flexible and easeful? Did we grow up with scarcity with food, or was food in abundance? Were we worried that we wouldn't get food, and so we were in situations where when it was available we needed to eat a lot of it? All of these things really affect our relationship with food. Interesting. There's so much research on this, and one of the most interesting things I think is that of course our relationship with food can lead to disordered eating and lead to eating disorders. We tend to think that eating disorders occur, this is kind of a widely held belief, that eating disorders, especially anorexia nervosa, occurs in wealthy, well-to-do, high economic status white females. And that's really not the case. Eating disorders don't discriminate. And what we have seen is that lower socioeconomic status children and teenagers have a lot of disordered eating behaviors and tendencies. They may come from homes where food is very scarce, food availability is very low, and so when they do get the opportunity to eat, they're going to eat a lot. Okay, that makes sense. Like, our bodies are really freaking smart. If we're not getting adequate nutrition, they're going to change the metabolism, change the hunger hormones, the appetite hormones, to ensure that when it is available, we're going to get it. But in those cases, what we often see is a lot of compensatory behaviors. So there will be the just biological binge eating because food is scarce. It's available, we're going to eat a lot of it. But then the fear attached to weight gain after that among these individuals. And so then they're engaging in dieting, and they're engaging in food restriction, and they're engaging in over-exercise behaviors, which is fascinating to me. That you're living in this, it's a marginalized position in the first place, and we're thinking about and worrying about fat. Where the heck, fat phobia? That fat phobia is real, and that's going to really impact our relationships with food. If we fear being fat, if we fear our bodies changing, it's very real and hugely impactful. But it's interesting when we think about it. When we're babies, we tend to be like coddled, and we're so cute when we're like chubby babies, right? Like the little rolls and the dimples and the fat on babies, like, that's freaking cute. And then things begin to change. It's like, that's not okay. That's not okay. As we get older, fat becomes tied very much to ill health and laziness and a lack of discipline. As teenagers, and especially for young women as they're approaching puberty, for example, weight gain becomes very feared. It becomes very feared, and it's absolutely normal and necessary from a health standpoint. Like, we need to gain weight during that time. It's a healthy part of maturing. And then as we age and we enter the perimenopausal stage and into menopause, we might notice our bodies changing too. And I can say this as a mid-40s woman, like I've noticed some changes. My cycle has changed. Um, the length of my cycle has changed. The pain during my cramps has changed, if we're being super honest here. Um, and the shape of my body has changed a little bit too. And it's like, huh, this is interesting. And can I approach myself curiously and kindly and compassionately and not feel like this is not okay? I need to change my body. This needs to stop immediately. Um, it's sad when I see women who in any other area they feel confident, they feel successful. Of course, all of us have our ups and downs and things like that, but the shame they have around their bodies is just it's incredibly limiting. But so can we change that relationship with food in our bodies from bad, and weight gain from bad to maybe necessary? Because in menopause, for example, that body fat that women start to notice around their abdomens, for example, it's protective. And most women don't know that. They look at it and they think, what is happening to me? This is not okay. I'm gross and disgusting, and this needs to end right now. And so, again, we just see so many examples of how our relationships with food are very much tied to our bodies. And, as a female, someone who identifies as female and who has been involved in the fitness industry for a very long time and participated in physique competitions for over 6 years, and I'm not alone in this because I work with a lot of women. I have felt what it's like to have my body objectified. And, admittedly so, I have perpetuated this in many ways and reinforced it by the sorts of practices that I've engaged in. At the time that I was engaging in them, I wasn't thinking about that though. I didn't necessarily see the damage that I was having on my relationship with my body, and my relationship with food as a result. But, when we're in that body objectification sort of a space and we're engaged in those behaviors, when we're literally just viewing our bodies as objects that we can carve and chisel and shift and shape and manipulate, we begin to look at food very differently too, because food becomes the way to do that. Food becomes the vessel to do that, as opposed to the way to having optimal energy and nourishment. And, when I went from bodybuilding and competing, I moved into cycling and endurance sport. And this may surprise some people because cycling, for example, you're wearing these tight clothes. And for a lot of people, there is very much the concern about like how you look. But for me, a shift happened and it was like I needed to eat. It was very much about how can I have the best performance so that I can ride my butt off. And not because my butt's too big, but because I need my butt muscles to power me up these hills. So it really, my relationship with that was a moment in my life where my relationship with food really shifted from restrict to get smaller and smaller and smaller and leaner and leaner and leaner to it being more performance driven and need adequate nourishment, and you don't want to freaking bonk in the middle of a hill on your bike. That would suck. And so there was like much less counting to make sure that I was eating, only this much, to if I did count, it was like, am I getting enough? So it was a really big shift. Yeah. But I guess to kind of bring this full circle, Melvin, it the these shifts in our relationship with food can start very early, obviously, but because of the fear of fat, the fat phobia that so many of us have, and I see this in women who are in smaller bodies being fearful of gaining fat. And I work with a lot of women in larger bodies who are fearful of not being able to lose body fat. So it's everywhere. But it's that, and it's the non-acceptance of body diversity being the way things should be and are. And can we celebrate that instead of demonizing it and latching on to this belief that every body needs to be this lean, chiseled fitness body? But I think it's a lot because of those things that diet culture perpetuates, that we jump into restrictive diets, and those diets, many of them, perpetuate fear around food. I mean, I'm working with a lot of clients right now who they're learning to trust themselves again around food. And they're learning to trust their intuition, and they're learning to listen to their hunger and fullness signals and reconnect with their bodies, because this is what restrictive diets can really get us away from, on top of just kind of demonizing pleasure and satisfaction around food and enjoyment around food and enjoyment in social situations with food. Like, all of these things have been really demonized by diet culture, and I want to bring it back. I want to bring back joy. And this doesn't mean not caring about health. I think we tend to hear we should enjoy our food, and there should be pleasure and satisfaction in our food, and we can eat intuitively. A lot of people hear that and they're like, but that's not caring about health. No, that's not what it means at all. There's a huge misunderstanding there. But anyway, there is my take on that.
So, just since there's also the intuitive eating style, right? That one's more for if how should I explain that? Yeah, versus like most of the people in the fitness industry has a version of intuitive eating is just eating smart in a sense, versus the like the what's the like the medical term, right? Like there is a certain eating style of intuitive eating.
Mhm.
Yeah, maybe you can just explain slight differences between something like.
Yeah, so what I hear among so many people in the fitness industry is thinking that intuitive eating is the hunger and fullness diet. Like, eat when you're hungry, stop when you're full. And that is severely misunderstanding the nuances of intuitive eating and how much it is tied to, and it's really a dynamic interplay between our emotions, our bodies, and our minds. And intuitive eating, to me, is a much more mature, complex way of being with food. And it includes understanding how to be with our bodies. And it is far more than just understanding cues of hunger, which dieting gets us away from. And I can go into that if you want to, but far more complex than just know when you're hungry, stop when you're full. That's turning intuitive eating into another diet, because now, again, it's black and white. Diets are, for the most part, very black and white. Eat this, don't eat that. Meet these macros, don't go over them. Restricting certain food groups, leaving some out, we all know there are lots of different diets, but restricting the time that you're going to be eating, things like that. Intuitive eating, though, as mentioned, a very dynamic interplay between the body, the mind, and emotion. And we're getting to what's called authentic health. And coming back to our very innate and natural way of understanding what our bodies need. You know, I live with a man, my partner, who, until he met me, didn't know what macros were. He ate intuitively, right? He was a very quote unquote normal eater. He would eat more some days and eat less others. He knew what he liked and enjoyed and incorporated that into his nutrition. He avoided the things he didn't like. He was concerned about health because he's very active and he wants to have optimal energy. So he would consider things like, what would be good for me to incorporate into my nutrition? And he would listen to his body. If there were things that he ate or he got to a point of fullness where he was like, ooh, that doesn't feel very good. That's kind of unpleasant fullness. He used that as information for the next time that he would eat. These are all the sorts of things that intuitive eating is really kind of we're relearning these sorts of things because diets move us away from those connections that we have with our bodies. For example, if I'm just eating based on macronutrient ranges, I did this for years because I dieted for years to compete. I am very, very likely going to, when I eat everything that's in my Tupperware container or on my plate or wherever it's housed, right? I don't remember a single meal where I stopped halfway through because I was satisfied, like I'm full, I'm good. No, usually what would happen is I would finish the meal and be like, I'm still really hungry. Oh, too bad. Like, nope, gotta wait till the next meal, Kori. Now, in some cases where it was really just like, this is not a good situation, I would stack 2 meals. But then it's like, oh crap. Now I'm not, you get into this like circular and this reasoning and this worry and this anxiety, like, oh crap, now I'm not going to have enough food to feel satiated for the rest of the day. Like, what am I going to do? And then we're so preoccupied by food all the time. Intuitive eating helps us to tune into our bodies so that we can relieve ourselves of that food preoccupation because we're taking care of ourselves adequately throughout the day and eating to satisfaction, eating to comfortable fullness. Now, mind you, intuitive eating is not for weight loss. It's not a weight loss tool. And that's where I think a lot of confusion exists too. It's learning to accept the size and the shape and our genetic blueprint of our bodies and to get out of the way of where our body's weight is naturally going to land when we're energized and when we're healthy and when we're engaging in social activities that fill us up and that help us to feel flourished, and when we have food flexibility and we feel like we can, you know, move and shake and adapt where we need to and eat food sometimes that we maybe don't necessarily want, but it's what's available. We're honoring different types of hunger. Intuitive eating isn't just about physical hunger. All of us know that sometimes we eat because something tastes good. And not because we genuinely are like, oh, my stomach's growling, or I'm hypoglycemic and shaky or sweaty. It's like, no, we eat it because it tastes good. Usually this is a dessert sort of situation. It's like, I just finished dinner, I'm full, but I feel like something sweet. I want to taste that. So it's honoring that sort of hunger. And it's not all the time, because again, intuitive eating is not like, throw all principles out, don't be conscious, just eat whatever, whenever. Like, that's not even what intuition is. But that's the misunderstanding. Intuition No, it's combining like knowledge that you have, maybe practical knowledge. Like if I have tracked macros my entire life, then I know what's in food, right? A lot of people who have chronically dieted their entire lives, like they know more about food than most people on the planet. But it's a matter of shifting their mindset around food and the rules they have around food, because everything is very rule driven. Um, and intuitive eating helps us to get underneath all those rules so that we can take better care of ourselves. It's much less about controlling everything and making sure everything is binary and we can check off all the boxes. It's a lot more curious, like it's exploratory. It's trusting the process of learning to understand ourselves. And we might gain weight when we do intuitive eating. We might lose weight, or we might stay exactly the same. But again, the goal is not weight loss, it's self-understanding and reconnecting with ourselves. Does that help?
Mm, yeah. So, like, with the new experience and the new knowledge of where you are at, versus
Mm-hmm.
where you were before, like how, let's say for somebody that, let's say, speaks to you about dieting, like how has
Mm-hmm.
your kind of like recommendations changed or advice?
Yeah, that's a great question, Melvin. And it's been it's been a real process for me as I've changed personally to how I work with people professionally. I've changed my program to be more about, it's always been about food psychology, but it lacked the intuitive eating research. It was about food psychology and dieting, and food psychology and weight loss, and how can we become better dieters. And so it lacked this whole other body of and field of research, um, that shows how this can be incredibly harmful, and not just on a physical and mental and psychological level, but there's a whole social justice side to this. And so I'm still doing food psychology, but I'm incorporating it's much more complex and nuanced. We explore a lot more things, and it's more diet recovery based. So I do have a lot of clients who are like, I can't do another freaking diet. I don't want to.
Mm,
I still want to lose weight,
mm,
and I can't do another diet. I'm binge eating. My relationship with food sucks. Like I'm preoccupied with it all the time. I don't know what to eat anymore. I've dieted most of my life. You know, I have clients, Melvin, who have been dieting since they're 5 years old because their mom took them to Weight Watchers with them. It's like they have a lot of unlearning to do, and they have a lot of relearning about how to trust their bodies. The process is there's a lot of ambivalence in it. There's a ton, because people come to me, they just know, they're like, I can't do another diet.
mm,
If I start tracking macros again, it's like, it's no holds barred. That just creates this sense of urgency inside of me. And it's like, I go off the deep end again. And that's normal and natural with restriction. Restriction creates that pull to eat. We can't trick our biology. We just cannot. Um, it's very rare to have someone who can maintain a very rigid, very strict diet for a significant period of time. This is why even competitors, like, they gain weight in their off seasons. Some a lot, some less, but there's a lot of restraint involved in that. And I think we hold that up on a pedestal a lot of times. But I think if we look deeply, we can admit that it's hindering our lives in many, many ways. Um, but so, like I said, I work a lot with women who come to me who have chronically dieted, and just know they can't anymore. And so there's a lot of ambivalence, like, I really want to have a smaller body, I want to be leaner, I want to lose weight, and I just know I can't diet anymore. And so it's, gosh, we do a lot. It's really a process of recognizing, like, where are you right now in the first place? How did you get here? And acknowledging the shame that they feel and really digging into where that came from. Because again, you were not born with it. We tend to believe that we are the failures for not being able to do it anymore, as opposed to looking at the situation and the circumstance and realizing that that's not doable. So we're flipping the script. We're externalizing the shame, and we're externalizing the biases, to recognize that this isn't a matter of us being undisciplined. It's not a matter of us being broken individuals that need fixing, especially with the clients who I'm working with, and I work with a lot of people who are binge eating. They're like, what is wrong with me? Why can't I stop this behavior? It happens when I'm happy, it happens when I'm sad, it happens when I'm depressed, it happens when I'm anxious. I can't pin down like the one thing that makes it happen. Mm-hmm. But underneath it all, what we typically see is restriction. Either physical restriction, where they're not eating certain foods or food groups, there's time restriction, they're trying to have this big block of time where they're not eating, for example, or it's just restriction in overall calories, or the psychological restriction, which is, I can't eat this, I should not be eating this, this is a bad food, this is off limits, and just the mental shaming and that terrible critiquing, critical self-talk that you hear in your mind if you do have that food. So it's a lot about that, externalizing the shame, understanding that so much of what we do is conditioned. We are a product of our environments and causes and conditions, and understanding how those are affecting us, and not in disentangling ourselves from the ways in which our culture and other people and our friend groups, social media, all of the different things out here external to us have impacted and influenced us, and how we've internalized those messages and made them our own. Like, so there is this reckoning with and a questioning of, okay, wait a second, is this really my value? Like, when did needing to be small become my value? And what if I didn't believe that anymore and honored this body the way that it is? It's learning to look at our bodies differently and trust that they know what they're doing. As my body has changed, I'm not lean like when I was competing by any means. And I'll look at my upper arm, Melvyn, and I'll be like, thick or gross, or something will pop up in my mind. I have thick arms. They're muscular. And I'm like, okay, so you have thick arms, so why is this a bad thing? Why has that become a bad word for a body? We're asking a lot of questions. It's deep, it's reflective, it's exploratory discovery work. It's hard. There's a lot of reckoning, and there's a lot of ambivalence, because we're unearthing for a lot of people what feels like has become their identity. Does that make sense? Yeah. And a big part of it is my helping them to find a community and relationships and people in their lives who are going to be supportive of these changes that they're making, who can help them not because a lot of us, I think we change our behavior to try to fit in instead of recognizing that, you know, if we have to try to fit in, this is the wrong group of people. This is about, I should be able to step into this community or this relationship and belong just as I am and be respected. So part of my job is in helping clients explore how they can find a community. The other thing too is really on a practical level, getting really in touch with what the barriers are to them making this change in their lives and protecting their recovery and their mental health and their well-being. Looking at their social media and, you know, seeing what are the accounts, who do I follow, that when I see it, I go into instant comparison mode. You know, I feel not good enough. I feel small. I start thinking about what I need to change and you know, how I'm not enough, versus someone who, like, I feel inspired. I feel enthusiastic when I hear what she's saying. I can relate to her or him or them, and gradually making those changes to protect your health.
So, like, let's just say if somebody were to just, let's say, an advice of somebody were to just start a diet, for
Yeah.
example, without going into too much detail of, like, let's say, you first, like, where would you kind of recommend them start with first, as compared to just you know, normally it's just like, all right, let's count your metabolic rate, let's just you getting hit this macros, okay, and that's it. Like, what would be
Which is
your
what a lot of coaches do, right? I want a diet. Here's your macros. Okay, go. I think we need to be a lot better at assessing where this person is coming from. Why do you want to diet? How come this is important to you? What are you hoping to achieve through your diet? How are you going to feel? You know, what are you anticipating as a result of losing weight? What do you understand about dieting? Has there been a time in your life when you felt comfortable in your body? What was that like? What were your friendships and relationships like at that point? Who's having an influence on you right now in terms of, you know, promoting or nudging weight loss? A lot of times, you know, we have clients who come to us who their doctor says they need to lose weight. Well, guess what? Most of the conditions that people are going to their doctors for don't require weight loss to help with. But there's a lot of misunderstanding within the medical community about that. So I think we need to also assess what this person is doing from a health promotion standpoint. What is their relationship with food? What is their relationship with their bodies? What's their body image like? What is their relationship with physical activity and movement? Because diet culture has married exercise and movement with weight loss. And I have a lot of clients who, unless they can lose weight, they're not interested in exercising. It's like, whoa, really? Like, but it makes sense to me. Why would I exercise if I'm not going to see results in my body getting leaner? Well, let's answer that question, because there are a million reasons if we get out of what diet culture is telling us the entire time. So, no, I don't ever just jump into, oh, you want to lose weight? Okay, cool. Here are your macros. Let's do it. Weight loss is not going to be appropriate for a lot of people, especially if their relationship with food and their relationships with their bodies are incredibly dysfunctional, and or they're engaging in disordered eating behaviors. If they're binge eating, I'm not putting a person on a diet. No way. We have to heal and recover from what's there. If I did that, I'm gonna throw them deeper into their disordered eating patterns. So we need to have a really good sense of where clients are coming from and where they're at currently, their histories. I have an assessment that I do that looks at like a lot of different variables in terms of how conscious they are with their eating, their awareness around eating, how good they are at setting boundaries, like their comfort level with eating in general. Because like we've talked about, eating has become such a fearful thing. That's another part of the work is, what's my identity as an eater? Because I can speak for myself. At varied points in my life, I've noticed that I'll notice thoughts like, you don't deserve to eat this. Whoa. Okay, where did that come from? I don't deserve to eat it. We all deserve to eat food. Like, we all deserve to be nourished. We all deserve to be fed adequately. Um, yeah. Like, and can I eat in front of other people? And am I worthy enough to eat in front of other people? Like, these are things that affect a lot of people. And if I just throw someone into a diet, no, I'm doing harm by doing that. I've had lots of conversations with other coaches too about, like, so if we're going to intuitively eat, does that mean that we can't track? And no, it doesn't mean that at all. The difference is, what are you tracking and how are you tracking, and what is the motivation behind the tracking? So I don't call it tracking, because that word itself is associated so much with numbers and black and white, very binary, and macros. I'm not demonizing macronutrients, like, and I'm well versed in macros, but I call it journaling because there are so many ways that we can journal to get a better understanding of what we like, what we don't, when we eat, at learning to listen to our bodies and the different levels of hunger and the different levels of fullness and what contributes to our satisfaction. There's mental satisfaction is very mental. It's like, when you first like take a bite of your meal and you're like, mm, mm. And then as you progress through the meal, you're like, yeah, it's still good, but now it's not so good anymore. Like, I'm kind of done with it. Like, you're tuning into your different levels of satisfaction, and we can journal to understand these things about ourselves too. So yeah, so many different ways of kind of assessing our clients in order to be able to help them reconnect with themselves and really understand, do I want a diet? Well, maybe I want something else. Maybe, because oftentimes what I see is people decide to jump into a diet because they're dissatisfied with something else, not getting an emotional need met somewhere else, and the body and food seems to feel like a really easy target, and everyone else is doing it. I just posted on Instagram today and asked the question, like, when was the last time you had a conversation, especially a female-only conversation, where there wasn't any diet talk, body bashing, or appearance-related things said? It's rare. And if everyone else around us is doing it, then that becomes the norm, right? So a lot of this work can feel pretty revolutionary, but oh my God, it can feel so freeing too.
So coming with that, like, let's say if you were to have to motivate, let's say somebody wants to stay motivated to their diet or their weight loss goal, right? How would be like one recommendation you have for them?
To stay motivated towards their weight loss goal. Hmm.
Coming in where you are right now versus where you would have been.
You're putting me on the spot here, Melvin. I'm uncomfortable right now. Like,
Then no worries. No worries.
no, it's okay. I I think we need to really get in touch with our values. You know, whether you're choosing to be intentionally trying to lose weight or intentionally moving into learning to trust your body and not be married to macros, um, we better be really in touch with our values because it's our values that are going to move us into committed action. There are going to be times, no matter which path we're going to take, where our motivation wanes, our moods suck, we're just like our energy is in the crapper. No matter what path we take, this is life. And it's our values and getting in touch with them again that is going to help us remember why we started this in the first place.
Mhm.
We don't need to feel super energized and enthusiastic to do skillful, wise, committed things. But oftentimes we let our moods move us into unwise, dysfunctional, less than committed action. And that doesn't mean that we shouldn't listen to that and ask some valuable questions like, what's going on here? What do I need in this moment? What needs my attention? But what is most important to us can bring us back to, okay, now what would be the most skillful action to take next? Does that help?
Mm. Okay. Because no, just saying as a side note, because IG live is 1 hour, so it's gonna be. So I guess my last question to you is that it's been no, like, what have you learned this year? Like, with whatever's happening.
Oh my gosh, what have I learned?
Yeah, the most important thing you learned this year.
I don't I don't think I can make it one thing, Melvin, honestly. I've been involved in so much personal exploration, and I started talking to a counselor. Um, I firmly believe, like, I'm a mental health therapist. Like, I think every coach needs a coach, and I think every mental health therapist should be involved in therapy at some point in their lives. Um, especially recovering from the accident, I learned so much about how I was still in many ways entrenched in diet culture and how I was not trusting myself and not trusting my body and not using my voice to speak up. Oh boy, I've shifted a lot of my values on this big things. Um, how to coach differently. I've learned so many new skills, especially from a motivational interviewing standpoint, and how, um, I teach people how to coach people, and that doesn't mean that I don't have more to learn. Like, there is always more to learn. Um, that our clients are the experts in their own lives.
Mm.
That I think that we as coaches can get into this mindset that we need to direct them and tell them what to do and be the experts, um, to help them meet their goal.
Mm.
Not going to go well if we do that. We may have a few clients who really kind of latch on to that, just tell me what to do sort of behavior. No. Clients want to know that they feel seen, that they feel heard, that their opinions matter, that their lived experiences, um, are considered, and that we empathize with them. Clients are very much, they are much more guided by what they hear themselves say than what they hear us say. And so I don't, I come from a mental health therapist background and counseling background, so it was never necessarily my way of being with clients to tell them what to do and to give them advice. Um, but I have really been learning how to take even more of a step back and let them be the guide. And I'm going to accompany them because our clients have the answers inside of them. Um, and that's how I've been approaching myself too. Something that I've like been practicing and kind of settling into and grounding myself in is you've got the answers inside of yourself, Kori, because what I've noticed is, and this probably won't come as much of a like as much of a surprise. I think those of us who get into competing and especially physique competition in many ways we're looking for external validation. Well, when the compliments stop because your body changes and you're not like this lean, ripped machine anymore, it's like, where do you get your confidence from? In here.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Uh, just because it invites 1 minute and 25 seconds
Oh
remaining.
boy, we did good. Yeah.
So I'll just say first like to thank you for being here, and then thank you everybody else for tuning in. And
Yeah, thank you.
it's nice catching up with you after such a long time.
Oh my gosh, Melvin. Yes, for sure. And this was my pleasure. Thank you for the conversation.
No problem. And then we'll be tuning in, listening to you in the virtual summit, and then there's some
Yeah.
other projects that we'll be speaking to you about.
Awesome. I will look forward to it.
Thank you. Thanks everybody. Thank you for
Thank you.
watching.
Bye.
Bye. Have a good day.